So now that we're pretty much done with the design of our user interface, there's only one thing that looks a little bit different from our original intention. It's the fact that the dice images should probably be in the center of the screen, and it should have a little bit of padding from the edges. Let's go ahead and implement those changes. Previously, whenever we needed to embed a widget inside another widget or add another widget somewhere into the widget tree, we've always taken our widget out, say remove our row widget here and all its children, and instead return something like a center widget, which has a child, which is now going to be the row widget. And you can see that when I put that in there and I delete all the parts that I don't need, and I move that semicolon down to the closing bracket for center and add a comma there, then you can see that this does what I need it to do, which is to move our row into the center of the screen. But that was kind of fiddly, and especially messing around with the semicolons and commas, you're bound to have issues eventually down the road. So I want to show you a much easier way, and you're going to be using this a lot once you discover it. Now, it's important to first show you what the pain points are, which is why I've kept this in the secret bag until now. Let's say that we want to do the same thing as we did before. We want to move our row from the top left corner of the body, which is this part below the app bar, all the way to take up the center of the space. So we need a center widget around our row. And essentially, what we want to do is to insert a center widget at this point here. So below the scaffold, but above the row, so that all of the row and the expanded widgets and our dice images are contained inside this center widget. So the widget that we want to embed inside a new widget is the row. And instead of cutting it out and moving it somewhere else before replanting it back here, we can simply select it. So put our cursor anywhere on the word row and then go into our Flutter outline, and we can click on this button right here. And if you hover over it for long enough, it'll tell you this button will center the widget that you've currently got selected. So in the outline, you can see we've got the row selected. When you click on it in the code, it will move the selection in the tree. But this is what we want to select, and we're going to click on this button, and it will automatically add that center widget around the row, which is almost like wizardry. The beauty of this is that it'll move the semicolons or commas as needed. It'll add that child property, and we don't have to do anything other than just click on a button. Now, there's many ways of actually getting Flutter to embed or add, and there's other things that we can do automatically as well. For example, if we wanted to embed our, row inside a column, we could simply click on this wrap with column button, and now our row is inside a column. I'm going to hit Command Z to go back before we get really lost in messing around with all the buttons. But another way of doing this is you can simply select the element inside the widget tree here, and you can right click on it to center the widget or add padding or wrap with column, wrap with row, wrap with container. And these are pretty much all of the most common things that you'll want to do. But sometimes you might want to do something that's a little bit more specific, such as what if we wanted to remove this expanded widget out of the tree, but I wanted to leave the image widget where it is. Essentially, I want to simply pluck that expanded widget out of the tree and make the dice one image a child of the row without having an expanded widget around it. Again, normally that would be really, really painful. And over here, you can't actually really do it when you right click, right? What I need is a delete widget. Now, you can get access to that if you click in your code and you go over to that light bulb that shows up. And if you click on the drop down list, you can see, we have more things that we can do. We can remove our widget. We can move our widget down so that this one becomes the second child in the row. and it gets moved over to the right of the row, or we can remove widget. And that achieves exactly what we were talking about, which is removing the expanded widget from the tree, but leaving the image where it is inside the row. Now, I didn't actually want to do that because our design now looks like this. But I wanted to be able to show you what you can do by tapping into these so-called intention actions. You can add padding, you can center the widget, everything that we saw over here, and there's more, right? For example, let me remove my expanded widget and go back to the scenario where I wanted to wrap our image inside an expanded widget. Instead of cutting it out, moving it around, doing all sorts of complicated things, I could have just clicked on the light bulb and clicked on Wrap with New Widget. And it'll wrap my widget inside a new widget at that position in the tree. And now I get to type expanded, and it does exactly the same thing. My widget is now inserted into the tree, and my image now looks as it should. The light bulb will show up once you click on something that has these intention actions. So namely in Android Studio, if you have the dark mode enabled, it'll be something yellow like center or row or expanded, one of the widgets basically. If you wanted to pull up that menu without needing your mouse, then you can move your cursor to the widget that you want to embed or delete or do something to, and then hold down Option or Alt and hit Enter. So it'll be Alt Enter for Windows and Option Enter for Mac. And then you pull up that menu anyways. And this will be a really fast way of adding padding, of removing widgets, of doing all of these intention actions. And actually, what I want to do right now is to add some padding around our dice images, so our expanded widgets, in order for it to look a bit more like this. So there's a bit of space in between the images and also from the sides of the screen. So using the intention actions menu that we just talked about, can you insert 16 pixels of padding around both dice so that they end up looking like this? Pause the video and try and complete this challenge. We've got our two image widgets, which we need padding around. So all we need to do is to put our cursor onto the widget that we need to pad, and we're going to hold down Option or Alt and hit Enter, and then we're going to select Add Padding. And automatically a whole bunch of code gets written for us. And it's so simple that you could almost just hit Tab all day long and get all your code written. Now, by default, when we insert padding, it adds 8 pixels of padding around all 4 edges, but that's not enough for us, so we're going to change that to 16. And now we have our images nicely padded. And I can do the same thing to my other image, add padding and change it to 16. So now that we've achieved the look that we want, we're finally ready to start adding functionality to our app. So for all of that and more, I'll see you on the next lesson.